Hey, what's going on, guys? I just want to start this off by saying thank you to all my patrons. All your contributions have gone directly into funding all the reels on this table. I greatly appreciate your contributions, and keep it up, guys. I need you. I need you more than you know. And with that being said, this review is going to encompass 3 of the very budget-friendly reels. Each one of these reels at the bottom is going to center in at around $20. Depending on where you purchase it from, whether it's Walmart or Amazon. I'll put links down below if you want to purchase them from Amazon. I think they're roughly 15 to 20-ish bucks shipped on Prime. And I'll also put a link down there if you're a college student and you want to get free Prime. Or if you're not a student, you get a 30-day Prime trial. And one other thing before I go ahead and tear these reels down and show you what makes them tick. You're going to find out that there is one reel specifically that really does go that extra mile to try to be the best value and check as many boxes as possible in comparison to the other 2 reels. And one reel in particular really does show that it should be at this entry-level price point. And one thing before we go in, I always like to mention that I'm not biased in any way. I do have my preferences in tackle that I buy, but when I do these reviews, I keep that out. So what I find, whether it's disappointing, whether it's a surprise, or whether it's assumed already, I try to leave that out when I'm showing you guys what I come across. And this particular review kind of blew my mind. I was a little bit disappointed in one aspect and shocked in a few others to find certain things in these reels in this price range. So without further ado, let's get started. I appreciate the time you guys spend here, and I really do hope you guys learned something that's deemed helpful to you guys. And bonus nachos, this is a quick little preview as far as what's going to be coming up shortly. From the left to right, this is the $50 to $60 price range reel comparison that I'm going to be doing. On the left, you have the Abu Garcia Silvermax 40. We have the Mitchell 300. We have the Guggen Squad's Select Tackles Defender spinning reel and Concepts Creed reel. And I just wanted to show you because I had these in the background. I do have a review plan for all 4 of these reels. And I'll tell you what, mind blown. Hope you guys check that one out soon. All right, so I guess I'll start with the dismantling of the Shimano FX, which is on the left. And just to let you guys know, Shimano is my favorite spinning reel company. They generally always have been, so let that be known. And again, I keep my bias out of my reviews, no matter how disappointing. Hashtag Shimano fanboy. Hashtag not a millennial Shimano fanboy. So what I'm going in with now is a size 0. I use this guy here. It's a Wera Pozidrive size 0. Size 0s will work on every one of these screws. The Daiwa does have a location where a size 1 may prove helpful. And make sure you don't leave any solder behind. Get all those screws out. We got that little sneaky one right here that Shimano always tends to use for the rash guard plate. And the reason why I want to kind of show you as I take these reels apart is I just want to show you how easy it is to work on these spinning reels. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take all the reels apart at the same time, and then I'm going to go ahead and go over the guts separately. So I'll leave a little bubble that tells you if you want to skip ahead, be my guest, and I'll tell you where it's going to start there. That was a pain for whatever reason. And now I'm going to use a 12mm box wrench to get that Daiwa rotor nut off. And the other little thing Daiwa likes to do on their spinning reels. Oh, I'm saying Daiwa. This is Shimano. You got too many reels on the table when you have the reel in your hand. You just flat out calling it by its incorrect brand. And the last lone soldier. Alright, so we got the Shimano apart. Time to go in for the Daiwa. Now, since I like to be as honest as possible, I already shot this review, and then I realized that the Quantum Qray was $20. I thought it was a different price, to be honest. I thought it was like a $10 or $15 reel. So I was like, crap, what am I just going to do a review of that reel by itself? So I kind of already had these reels apart. So I kind of left certain things a little looser than I normally would. This is one of those things where I've had these reels for a while and I have put time on them. I just forgot how much they were. Now, in terms of how the handles are connected, I like the Daiwa's best. I like the idea how it has that kind of hex that goes around the main shaft and is through bolted like this. The other reels on the table you'll see go about it a different way. And the Quantum Qray. And one thing you'll notice as far as the fit and finish, the drag knob is molded about as precise as, I don't know, you tell me, how precise is that? Between the overspray and overmolding, doesn't really, play into anything, but it's definitely noticed. And the nut on this one's a 10mm, and it's reverse threaded, so you don't want to, so righty tighty, lefty loosey does not apply. It's the opposite. And just watch when you take this off that you don't dump those little compression washers out, those little lock washers. Alright, so almost there. I will say, my time spent on the water, there was nothing negative about these reels. They're not gonna fish as buttery smooth and as efficient as what you would get out of a $100 or $180 type class reel. But if $20 is your budget, these reels they'll get the job done for a bit. All right, now let me kind of separate some of the crap here. Keep each reel separate a little bit better. And we're going to start going over the reels bit by bit. You know what? At this price point, let's go in. I haven't been into the rotors yet as far as the bail return. So let me do that real quick, because at this price point, that's actually kind of important. I remember when I was younger and using reels at around this price range, bail springs were one of the primary points of failure. All right, now in terms of the rotors, you'll see on the bottom of the Shimano on the left, See those teeth there? That's how the anti-reverse works. The Daiwa does not have that, neither does the Quantum. Now if you look at the three bail mechanisms, the left and center, being the Shimano and the Quantum, are fairly similar. And then you have the Daiwa that uses that kind of familiar to all baitcaster owners thumb bar mechanism spring, only it's a little bit beefier. All these designs are perfectly fine. Surprisingly, the Daiwa is probably the tightest on open and snappiest on close. I kind of like this mechanism better, but you know what? These springs, I don't assume that they're any less quality than what you would find in a $100 or a $200 reel, and all these springs will last as long as the reel lasts. And in terms of the Rotors design, all are the same design. You're not going to see any of that, curved or reinforced engineering that you'll find in the higher end reels. But again, you're only going to be using these reels with 2 or 3 pounds of drag. It means nothing. And let's take a look at the line roller on the Shimano. We got a bushing. Bushings are not the end of the world, especially in freshwater. The only thing that you need that line roller to do is turn under load, and the friction coefficient of a bushing in that spot is perfectly fine. The only negative, sometimes they can be damaged due to debris, and they'll bind or squeak. Alright, so we're not getting this one open. I guess there was some thread locker on this, and even though I applied proper amount of pressure, it chowdered it and I can't grip it. I believe the Quantum actually uses a ball bearing. And Daiwa is going to go ahead and use a bushing. I'll double check on that Quantum. And using a bladed screwdriver, I still wasn't able to get that to budge. You can see I mangled that screw pretty good. And even with the bladed screwdriver, I still wasn't able to get it to budge. And it wasn't necessarily the screwdriver kind of torque or camming out. It was the Chinesium metal kind of giving up the goat as I applied more pressure. So that stinks. Not the end of the world. In a $20 or $15 price range, you may or may not even bother ever opening them up. But yeah, I just wanted to go over the rotors with you, the bail trip mechanisms, and the line rollers. So moving along from the top down, let's look at the anti-reverse mechanisms of each one of these reels. Right away, all three of these reels are drastically different. Shimano for the last umpteen years has always opted to put all the guts in the non-handle stem portion of the reel. Usually they'll make the handle stem in the medium to higher end reels out of metal, and this portion out of a glass fiber or reinforced plastic, or their CI4, which is a carbon reinforced plastic. So this is the Shimano, and it's anti-reverse. Now, since we're working left to right, the Shimano's anti-reverse, you'll see this piece right here. This, when the reel turns, when it tries to go backwards, it kind of locks up. So when it's turning forward, nothing's going to happen. But since the rotor is keyed to the pinion, when it turns backwards, it's going to grab on the anti-reverse dog. That's how the Shimano works. And if you look down in here, these two screws keep that little silver piece on the bottom here, which is the only ball bearing in the reel. Then Daiwa takes a similar approach, but instead of incorporating the AR into the rotor itself. So essentially how the Daiwa anti-reverse mechanism works, this is the pinion gear that the main gear turns. These teeth that are cast into here are essentially performing the same role as the teeth that were cast into the rotor, that were molded into the Shimano rotor. And this little white piece of nylon or plastic here, when you slide the pinion in like that, now see if you can, first of all, focus. When you slide that pinion in like so, you see how it's clicking as I turn it? That little white piece of nylon needs to slide around and over. And now you're going to see it's quiet. So when you're installing that again, make sure that it's not just in this little gap here. It looks like it's supposed to be there, but it's supposed to be over more towards the dog. And you can see as I turn it, and you can pretend that's me retrieving, that little white plastic nub is kind of keeping that dog out, but the second it goes backwards, it clears to allow the dog to engage the tooth and the pinion. Both designs are fine. Each design doesn't do anything drastically different or better. Moving on to the Quantum Qray. Now this is where it gets a little bit different. Now when you look at these $20 price point reels, they generally are all built to a specific price. They're built to maximize profit while hitting that price point. That's essentially how all fishing reels are made nowadays. But this is a little bit different. Now, let me take this top bearing support off. So it goes, the way this is assembled, if you take it apart, you have that gold little bushing that goes underneath the rotor. You have the bearing, a bearing retaining sleeve, and it's all situated like this. You can see it's smooth on the bottom, kind of has those little cutouts and grooves on the top with the bearing facing up. And now, this is the clutch design of the Quantum Qray. And what's interesting about this is the fact that it's 20 bucks and it incorporates an instant anti-reverse clutch bearing. So if this clutch unit was installed into the reel, it would lean this counterclockwise. So anytime you're going backwards with the handle, it's going to lock up. So right here is it simulating a retrieve, and this is a hook set. So I'm trying to turn it backwards and it won't go an inch. It won't even go a millimeter. It locks up pretty good. And I even got some grease on that clutch sleeve. And grease, for the longest time, has been the mortal enemy of AR clutch bearings, and it seems to lock up pretty solidly. So not only for $20 do you get a main and pinion that are different metals. Generally speaking, if you have two identical types of metal, they could actually wear quicker. And I'm assuming that this is some kind of like a zinc alloy. We're not talking any super metals here, guys. But zinc on brass has been around for, decades. And for, this kind of price point, it's acceptable to me. If you look at the older Stratics and Sustains, that's exactly what you got. Zinc on brass. Alright, now, let me get this back in so parts don't go flying. Now, even though I've been called the the Rain Man of fishing reels, I kind of like that one. I want to get this kind of partially put back together for the simple fact that I don't want to make more work for myself, and confusing screws is the worst possible thing you can do with any fishing reel. You confuse a main gear, you're fine, because it generally won't fit or won't work. You confuse screws, you start stripping out screws. Or you go too deep and they kind of bulge the frame, and ugh, you don't want to cross that road. Alright, so now let's get to the main gears. Alright, now let's get to the main gears. And some of these reels, to get the main gear out, you do have to remove the spool shaft. And in order to do that, you kind of turn this until it gets down, and you can see that screw down here. And whenever you remove that, make sure it doesn't come up and hit the teeth of the gear. I've seen people do that. Shaft comes out easily. Boom. Main gear out. Let's go ahead and pull the main on the Daiwa. Now this is a little bit different. So I am going to turn it until that gets down to the bottom, and oh no, there's no screw there. What did Daiwa do? Daiwa has been using those little spring C-clips for a little while now. And your best bet is to take a pick tool and kind of pry that out. See how it's coming out? With your thumb over top, because once it clears, it'll go flying. And then should come out fairly simply. Boom. And now on to the Shimano, not to be confused with Shishimo, which is its evil twin. And by twin, it's more or less the twin relation of Danny DeVito to Arnold Schwarzenegger in that 80s movie. Shaft pulled, and the shaft I threw in the Daiwa part section. Alright, now, if you look at these three main gears, it's no optical illusion. There is an obvious difference. Going from left to right, you have the Shimano, the Daiwa, the Quantum Qray. The Daiwa main gear is significantly larger and more robust than the other two. Now normally I would say that's a huge positive. It's a real difference maker when you compare these three reels. However, when you look at the pinion on the Daiwa appears to be made of the same exact material, and it's not very smooth. So what I'm seeing and feeling is a bit of porousness, while in long-term use it will wear in and smoothen out. It will also wear in a negative way. Same thing with the Shimano. So even though it is a better, more beefy gear with a larger tooth pattern, with more support being overall thicker, being that it's going to wear on that pinion completely defeats that kind of added bonus. And when you look at the Qray, they went with brass. Zinc on brass is going to wear better than zinc on zinc, plain and simple. Now in terms of what the Qray's gear is made out of, I really don't know. I came across some differences in the Boca and the Cabo when I did a Cabo review. Alan Hawk and I did reviews on the Cabo. I opted, and we discussed it ahead of time. He was going to do the larger, I was going to do the smaller. And when I compared the Cabo to the Boca, there was just this different kind of, almost like a heat treat pattern. So I don't know if this gear has gone through anything other than a casting. But if you look here, that is some machining. So I don't know if the gear itself is cast separate from this axle and then press fit. I don't know. It kind of looks like that could be, I don't know. I wish I had a definitive answer for you. You can definitely see the casting marks on the gear here. This is a cast piece going down the center, but you can definitely see down here there are some machining marks. So your guess is as good as mine. But with that being said, it does run on the brass pinion, potentially making it the longest wearing reel of the three. Now, that right now is the biggest difference between the instant anti-reverse and the brass zinc alloy main gear combination. Now let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room, ball bearings. The Daiwa and Shimano both have a single ball bearing. The Daiwa's is located at the top of the AntiReverse mechanism. The Shimano is mounted below, closer to the actual pinion teeth. The Qray has a bunch of them. It says 6 on the box. So we know we got, I'm assuming 1 in the line roller. We got 1 at the top end here. We have an anti-reverse ball bearing. We have 1 here, 1 here, and the opposite side plate. I'm not the biggest ball bearing shill. A precisely fit bushing will run cleanly and smoothly with a little play. But you know what? As long as the ball bearings are of decent quality, they do kind of make a difference. Especially when you're looking at reels in this kind of price range where tolerances just aren't near that of their higher end brethren. I will give every single benefit so far, other than that line roller ball screw. I'll give the benefit to the Abu. And again, when I fish these reels, I probably put about 20 hours a piece on each one of these reels. Mainly just smallmouth bass. I ended up catching a carp on the Daiwa that was about 5 to 6 pounds. I think the biggest smallmouth I got was about 16 inches. And I was going for quantity, not quality with these reels. And I was using Berkley Nano Fill. And if you look, I have file line tracer just spooled up just for placeholders. This is the line that I was using. So it was 8-pound Nano Fill, which in terms of how does the line handle on a reel, it is without a doubt one of the trickiest lines to work with because it's very thin, it's very wiry, has no stretch. So if a reel has poor line lay, it's really going to show up. Now, when you compare the Daiwa and the Shimano and the Qray, the Daiwa and Shimano are exactly equal. They're perfect. The line lay on the Qray is a little off. There's a gap at the top and a gap at the bottom. You can't shim that. So it's funny, I think they say the Qray has a long stroke spool design. Well, they put a taller, maybe a taller spool, is it? Yeah, it actually looks like it is a taller spool. If you look at where the line starts on the top and where it ends on the bottom on the Daiwa, which is on the left, and the Qray on the right, it looks like it's a taller spool. But the dang line doesn't make that far. So you have those gaps at the top and bottom. I would not want to use this reel coming from somebody who's gotten 1 wind knot in the last 15 years. And that was when I had a Z-Bass reel sent back from service and they shimmed the shaft, which allowed there to be a giant gap bigger than this at the top of the spool. So there was nothing I can do to prevent the line from underneath the line that's supposed to come off from shooting off and basically sneezing out a blob of mono through my guide, or braid through my guides. So having said that, I did throw a couple wind knots with this Qray. If you're fishing mono, not a big deal. Most guys that are fishing these type of reels at this price range are going to go with like a Berkley Trilene XL or something along those lines, using like a 6 or an 8-pound monofilament. They're not going to be using fancy braids. So not to stereotype or generalize, this won't necessarily impact you as negatively as it did for me using that ultra fine diameter wiry type superline with no stretch. So aside from that, you look at the level wind systems, they're all identical. They're all a cam driven locomotion level wind. You see this in reels at all price ranges. Nobody in this price range is going to incorporate a worm gear oscillation system. And Daiwa, on anything but their long cast reels, does not even incorporate a worm gear oscillation system any longer. Even their top of the line Steez, More Than, and Saltiga use an identical type of system, only it's more robust with more support with ball bearings over here and such. The Shimano uses that same locomotion level wind. To get to a worm gear, you have to spend $160 on the new Ultegra. Prior to the new Ultegra, it was the Shimano Stratic, which was the cheapest worm gear oscillated spinning reel. And then you have the Qray. Qray, again, the same deal, only it incorporates a little bit of extra support. And what that does, you'll see this on saltwater reels. If you have drag being pulled off under a tight drag, it's going to want to turn the spool shaft. You know, before the spool starts turning, and while the spool is turning, it's trying to twist that shaft. What that's going to do down here, when it twists it like this, you see how it's turning? It's going to try to push this side of the cam down and this side up. What did Quantum do? They put a little plate there to keep the side down. Nice little touch. And speaking of drag being paid out, let's pop the drag stacks. Lost it. This is the Daiwa, and it just has a single, it feels like black felt. So it's got a single disc, 2-element. The Qray, and again, ladies and gentlemen, that's why you keep your thumb on top of any springs that you're working on. The Qray has a 6-element multi-disc. We have felt, stainless, then felt, stainless, felt, stainless. So you have 6 discs there with 1 eared washer. You see this little eared washer right here. And the Shimano, not to be confused with Shishimo. That's why carbon composite drag stacks usually they'll pop. And again, you have your felt drag stack, or felt and stainless washer drag stack, identical to that of the Quantum, and it has that eared washer as well, and it incorporates 6 discs. And extra brownie points for Quantum using a star-shaped spring. You guys tell me, what do you guys think is the best reel on the table? Do you guys have any experience with any of them? I'm going with Quantum. I'm going with the Quantum over the Daiwa and the Daiwa over the Shimano. The smoothest reel on the retrieve was definitely a toss-up between the Daiwa and the Quantum. The Shimano was very lacking. I was kind of surprised. I was hoping that the Shimano would have felt a little bit better, but it didn't. And again, these are $20 reels. They are mass-produced, low-quality control. Two of the reels were even blister packed. And when I bought the Daiwa, I was stopping by my buddy's shop that just opened up, and I just decided to snag one because I'd already picked up a bunch of reels at Walmart, and I was able to open up the Daiwa. And 2 out of the 7 boxes I opened were installed improperly. You would hear the clickiness of the dog not being, you would hear this every time you turn the handle. You would hear that like 10 times per handle rotation. So that was a solid 30%, 20% of those reels had that problem. So, fortunately I was able to open up the box and find out which one was good. So I got a good one. The blister packed reels, I did feel kind of a crappy, stiff feeling Qray, and I opted to go with the smoother feeling one, which is, I guess, the benefit of a blister packed fishing reel hanging on a peg hook at Walmart. I don't know. So your mileage may vary. So yeah, it's a tough pill for me to swallow. Quantum all the way. Man, that sucks. It really does. It really does. Now, I think I got everything. 6 ball bearings on the Quantum, 1 on the Daiwa, 1 on the Shimano. All of them have plastic frames. I don't even, it's tough to tell if it's glass reinforced nylon or not. That feels like it could be. That is definitely, yeah. So it feels like it's glass reinforced. And what you can do to tell is when you scrape it, you can kind of feel like little raspy bits in there, and that's the glass fiber. Ah, yes, the handles. Because we all want collapsible handles in our lives. You got them. The most comfortable handle on the table, I like the Daiwa. It's a hard plastic, but it has a good feel to it. I like the texturing. There aren't any burrs on the mold marks. This Shimano handle, while it's pretty precisely riveted on there, I'm just used to this from dirt cheap reels from 25 years ago, and I always hated it. I always hated it. And the Quantum uses like a rubbery type grip. Some of you guys may find this type of grip to be the most comfortable, but I kind of like the Daiwa grip better. It reminds me of a plastic version of their bait casting reel knobs. Alright, so with that all being said, if you have any questions at all whatsoever, I always do my best to answer all the questions or comments down below. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you hit that like button. And if you want to help my channel keep going and growing, visit my Patreon page. And I thank all you guys who've already donated to my Patreon page. As I mentioned earlier in this video, all these reels were purchased with funds donated by you guys, and I couldn't have done this review without you. So thank you very much. I appreciate all the time you spend here. I know your time is valuable. I'll see you soon.